Okay, well, we are at 107. I'm guessing we'll probably have some other people trickling in here, but I want to make sure we're respectful of time. So we have our first guest speaker uh, today is Margo Fliss from the Center for Economic Development, and she has all sorts of great things to share with you all. And then our second speaker today will be Hollis, who is with us this morning as well. Oh, she's here now. I see her. To talk more about the museum partnerships. So I'm going to turn it over to Margo. And just to brag like a tiny bit, a fellow UAF alum that I got to hold on to the UAF-ness a little bit. I will turn it over to her. Margo, you can go ahead.
Thank you so much, Marcia. It's a real pleasure to be with you all this afternoon. I know it's been a crazy year, so I appreciate everybody coming and joining us and allowing me to share a little bit about the work that we do and ways that we might be able to collaborate with all of you. So that was serendipitous. I just created this slide because I thought I usually don't introduce, I introduce myself as part of the Center for Economic Development. I am a really proud UIF alum. My dad actually taught up there for many decades. And so love Fairbanks. Speaking of cold, my spouse was not from Alaska. So Fairbanks was a no-go for him, but loved growing up there, got my undergrad there, and then went to Mills College actually for my graduate degree, and then we decided it was time to come back to Alaska. So happy to be back here, and I've been with the center for about 5 years now. I'm the manager of strategic engagement, which is my cool title. That means I, as many of you probably do as well, do a number of different activities around economic development and working with students and faculty at the university. So the Center for Economic Development, I apologize, this is a little bit of alphabet soup here. So we are a university center, which is actually an EDA designation. It's a particular program through the Economic Development Administration. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. But we are a program of the UAA Business Enterprise Institute. So CED is part of BEI. BEI is our larger umbrella organization. When we were all able to work, in person, we are in one of the buildings on Burgas. So we're located next to East High School. Some of our partner centers include the Small Business Development Center, Procurement Technical Assistance, ADAC, AERC. So a lot of organizations that work with entrepreneurs or small businesses or do applied research projects. So that's my little spiel. Happy to follow up if any of you have questions about those other organizations later on. Happy to connect you with any one of those. But so we are the Center for Economic Development. So as you can imagine, we do a lot of work around economic development. We have four main areas that we really that we work in. Applied research is one of our biggest ones. Being a university center means that we have a mission to actually work across the whole state of Alaska and to work often with communities in remote or rural parts of the state around economic development issues that they might have. I work a lot on our entrepreneurial ecosystem development, another mouthful. Essentially, I assist with a lot of programming that really engages students, community members, and those who are interested in being entrepreneurs figure out what that means for them. And I run a lot of programming that helps people take their idea from, fledgling idea stage all the way up to actually forming a startup company. So we do a lot of programming in that space. We do planning and technical assistance. In economic development, there is a lot of work to be done around, they're called CEDS plans, comprehensive economic development plans. The main reason that communities do CEDS plans is, for example, when things like CARES Act money come. I know that was probably, hopefully once in a lifetime thing that we have a pandemic where we need to respond in such a way. But the federal government, before they distribute funds, looks to see how the community has thought about engaging all aspects of the community in planning for the future. So we help do a lot of that type of planning. And then we disseminate a lot of information about the university and about what economic development is. This is our lovely little team photo here over on the left. Our executive director, Nolan Clouda, is up in the top left. So I mentioned that we're a university center, and we've been a university center for many years now. They have a lovely little definition here, but one of the reasons I was so excited when I actually reached out to Marcia and said, I want to know more about what you're doing at CCEL and the programming that you have. And the reason that I was really excited about that was, as a university center, part of our goal is to really help faculty, students, staff, research at the university be connected with the community and vice versa. So that is one of our overall goals, and part of our mission is to really help connect the community with the fantastic faculty and students and research that are happening at the university. So I know of a number of other university centers just like ours. They are all across the United States. It's not necessarily one per state, but they try to kind of distribute them. It is a competitive process. You apply and then get this particular designation because it comes with some funding. Why I was really excited when I was talking with Marcia about the programming that's been happening at UAA was because there's a number of university centers just like ours who work hand in hand with essentially what would be CCEL's counterparts in other parts of the US. So one program that I have some colleagues I work with quite a bit at Indiana University, Bloomington, theirs is called the Center for Rural Engagement. And so they do a number of programs through this particular office that help engage students. So program they've been working on a lot lately is called START, where they've engage students and faculty in helping do like COVID relief programming. So trying to do a lot of engaged learning and bringing in, the university faculty with their areas of expertise to work with small businesses. And this particular university is in a more rural area of Indiana. So have a lot of friends over at that program. It's a really awesome one. And I love how they're really combining a lot of the aspects of what the Center for, I apologize, CCEL. I say CCEL because it's a mouthful for me to get out, but they essentially do a lot of the programming that CCEL does. Another example that I wanted to give is Western Carolina University. They have a program there that works specifically with faculty around senior capstone projects. So what's cool is the faculty they run the capstone project programming. Where the Rapid Center, which would be just like our center, comes in is oftentimes at the end of these capstone projects, there's something that either the student or the faculty wants to develop into a real idea, right? They've prototyped it and they're like, this might actually have a market. I might be able to sell this. I might be able to commercialize it. That's where the Rapid Center steps in and really helps them go through a number of different processes. We call them like customer discovery, and really helps them get that particular product to market. So it's a really cool way to connect this fantastic engaged learning opportunity with a startup. They often actually become a startup and take what they've learned through their senior capstone project and are able to turn it into essentially a job for themselves. And then Mississippi State University, we actually, I've quite a few friends down there. So they have a lot of programming that's similar to what we do, where they work with students and faculty, as I mentioned, who are looking to, maybe create their own startup. They have a fantastic idea. They have an area of research that they're highly specialized in, and they have something that they would like to create a startup around. But often they're like, I don't know how to do that. I'm excellent in my area. How do I take that or take research or projects my students have done and really help commercialize that and start to be able to look for funding? They do a number of different programs around venture capital. And one of the programs that I really like they have is called the Idea Shop. We had a program or a space like this at UAA. It was actually in the university library. An Idea Shop or a maker space, as they're often called, are places where people from across the university and often the community can come and really prototype. I have this fantastic idea, but I don't have any of the equipment that I would need to actually make a prototype to see if this idea will work. So that's one area that they really specialize in. And it's often a really cool space that, as I mentioned, I cannot remember the name of the one that was at the UAA library, but it was there for quite a few years. So I bring all those examples up to say this exact type of collaboration and partnership is happening in centers just like ours all around the United States, working a lot with their counterpart of CCEL to really help students and faculty who want to often take engaged learning projects to the next step, right? They're like, all right, this actually might be viable as a business or as a product that we could sell. How do we get that out into the world? What does it mean to be an entrepreneur? And that's where we step in. So, as I mentioned, I do a lot of work in the entrepreneurship ecosystem. I do a lot of programming that starts at the very, very, very early stage, where we often have people come and say, well, I'm like a math student, so I'm probably actually not that creative or innovative. And I'm like, I don't think that's true at all. A basis for a lot of our programming at CED is that diversity is what drives innovation, right? I love this quote that innovation is often seeing what everybody else has seen and thinking about it differently. So this idea that you have to be an engineer or you have to be in the tech space to be innovative or to have a startup is absolutely incorrect. So I start out at the very early stage of just saying, why don't you come and do some programming with us? We have a lot of cool courses that we do, a lot of cool classes. They're all free. And the point of them is to really normalize entrepreneurship as a potential career path. We always say if they get done with the program that we've done and they're like, this is not for me, that's okay because they've gotten a ton of hands-on experience and often will then make great employees, right? They've learned a lot about themselves, about what they like or what they don't like. And if they don't end up starting a startup at the end of the program, that's perfectly fine with us. They're often that much more prepared to be in the workforce. So when I originally had chatted with Marcia, I talked about some of the programming that we do. There's a couple of different names: human-centered design, design thinking. Some of you might have heard of some of these before. And what I always say is human-centered design and design thinking are processes of diverging and then converging. So thinking about a problem, you really often want to, we call this brainstorming, right? You want to think about all the different ways that this problem occurs and maybe what are different aspects that are driving this problem. It's usually not simple, right? They're often highly complex. So you want to think about all the different ways that you could think through a problem. That's often your inspiration phase. And then you start to converge when you start thinking about solutions. And then you diverge and converge. So it's a system that goes on and on. But as I always say, we didn't create this. Design thinking is essentially the scientific method or the scientific process of taking a small idea, testing it out, reflecting on what you've learned, and then going through that process over and over again. Something many university faculty are very, very familiar with in their respective fields. That looks a little bit different, but when we do design thinking or customer discovery in a lot of our entrepreneurship programming, one thing that we find is students will say, wait, I'm in a journalism class. This is like doing qualitative research. And we're like, yes, it is. We call it something different. It's often maybe a little more pared down, but these are skills that they're already learning through a lot of their university classes, and they're often maybe repurposed to do something a little bit different. So design thinking is a very hot, cool term right now that a lot of people or a lot of organizations and universities that are saying, we're big on innovation. That's fantastic. I think this is a lot of what they're talking about. And so I say that to mean many university professors and programs are already doing this. They are calling it something slightly different, right? So when we do a lot of our programming, that's what's exciting, is that people are like, actually, I'm really familiar with this. Mine might have had a slightly different flavor, but, we're not recreating the wheel here. But when there are projects that are going on, oftentimes in, classrooms or programs that are going on with students, sometimes when things, are they're labeled slightly differently, you're saying we went through a design thinking process with our students or whatever. That's something that some university, I'm not saying UAA necessarily, but like sometimes university higher ups are like, oh wow, they're really innovative, and I'm like, you're doing essentially some of the same work, but we teach a lot of this programming throughout the year to students and faculty alike. It's a very simple process that we go through to really take something from an idea all the way to a solution. So again, we do a lot of different programming that really tries to bring together people to not only take their ideas and see if they're going to make a viable startup, but there's a lot of support systems that have to go into an ecosystem to help people be really successful, right? So that 1 Million Cups, for example, that's what this photo is from, is where people get together to pitch their ideas once a week. It's every Wednesday at 9 a.m. The community is welcome. But the idea is often, if you're in a silo building your particular product or building your particular startup, there might be a resource out there or a connection that would be so fantastic for you, but you're never going to find it if you don't get out there and pitch your idea or your product to the community. We do a lot of workshops, as I mentioned, around how do you take an idea and how do you actually work it through this process of design thinking to see if it's a viable idea or business. We have an entrepreneur in residence. Her name is Dornstrom. She is a local entrepreneur who has many years of experience. And so we'll often have students or faculty who are like, I've been working on this idea for a while, but I want to, truth it out. I want to talk to somebody who's been there, done that. That's part of the free services that we're able to offer. You set up office hours and go have a chat with her, right? So we do a lot of these programs because we want to really normalize entrepreneurship, but we also really want to connect the university and the resources with the community at large. So talking a little bit more about how could we potentially collaborate, and excuse me just a moment, I'm like, how am I doing on time? I think I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. I thought I'd set my watch, but I did not. So how could we collaborate together? I mentioned we do a lot of workshops, and one in particular that I do quite a bit of work around we call them catalyzer events. Google sprints, design sprints, they come under a number of different names, but Volt 49, this is not a real building. This is a mock-up we did for this particular program. But when you're going through a design process, people come in with a problem. And so for Volt 49, we wanted to talk about what are opportunities for renewable energy to be commercialized in the state of Alaska, right? That's a massive topic. So one of the first things we have to do is find people who are energy gurus, right? We went to the university. We want a lot of faculty. I know people are very busy. We try to keep our events, can you come in for 3 hours on this particular day? Because it is often the faculty and the staff who have great knowledge, deep knowledge in a specific area that are absolutely vital to young entrepreneurs who think, I have a great idea, but I'm not actually that knowledgeable maybe about renewable energy. I've done a lot of research, but they really need to talk to an engineering professor, or they need to talk to a mathematics professor who's like, I actually have a lot of experience. Let me share with you what I know. Here's what works, here's what doesn't. So we do a lot of events like this it's integral to engage the research and the knowledge of faculty and staff from the university. They're a lot of fun. There's a lot of Post-its, and the idea is that people come in with a problem, you work it all the way through, and then they have a solution that they prototype at the end. But if any of you are, interested in doing a design sprint, you have a particular area of expertise that you would like to offer, we're always looking for staff and faculty that might be willing to come and talk to some of our students or some of our community members around a specific topic area. We often have projects that come out of this that go on to form startups. Which then, is kind of a slightly different conversation, but that's one way that I wanted to mention. We have these events going on, two that are in the works right now. We have another one around, we're calling it mobilization or transportation. There's a slight terminology change, but essentially, what do electric vehicles in Alaska look like? You know, that's been a lot of people have been talking about them. Either they're really interested in them, they don't want to see charging stations, whatever the conversation is. There's been a lot of buzz. And so we said, let's do a sprint around this. This is a great way to bring together people from across the community who are passionate about this and see if we might be able to have some startups form at the end of this particular process. The other one that we're working on is around aerospace. And the company that we have been in talks with, his name, the launch company, Ben Kelly is actually also UAF grad. We actually went to school together. And he has a really successful startup in the aerospace industry, which a lot of people would say, aerospace? Well, Alaska is actually a fantastic place. Geographically, they're able to launch a lot of rockets and do an extensive amount of research up here. So aerospace industry is growing really rapidly. So that's another spot that or another vertical, if you will, that we wanted to be doing a sprint on. I mentioned a lot of our programming. We have an accelerator program that I co-lead. An accelerator program is 12 weeks long approximately. We take students, community members, so faculty, if they were interested in participating, are welcome. It's not only it's free, we actually give a stipend. And the idea is you come in with an idea and it accelerates your growth, just like the name says, right? You take an idea from the very idea stage and you work it all the way through prototyping, you do customer discovery, you do branding, you do marketing. And at the end, you do a pitch, and often people go on to continue working on their startups after. That's open to, we do prefer UAA students or faculty. We do take community members for that program as well. If any of you are interested or have ideas that you would like to, you have a great idea and I really want to see if it's a startup or if it's a potential product, reach out. Our next cohort is going to be starting up this fall. We actually just finished our last cohort a couple of weeks ago. We have an internship program that places UAA students in local Anchorage startups. We are big believers in experiential learning. It is just absolutely critical. So the startups, this was actually our last cohort. The startups that we have been placing students at, it's a phenomenal experience for them because they get excellent UAA students to come and work for them, but then they also get a lot more connected to the university and are like, these are fabulous students coming out of the university. So if you know of any students that might be great for an internship program, oftentimes, again, people hear startups and are like, oh, but I'm not an engineering student. In this particular picture, we have one engineering student, we have one journalism student, one business student. I think she, in the top right, Lauren was, I want to say it was international relations. And then we actually had a dance and English major. So again, diversity is what drives innovation. That is one of the underpinnings for all of our programs. We want to be accessing students and faculty from across the university because everybody can be innovative and creative and have something to really bring to a lot of these discussions that we're having. So if you know of students that might be interested in an excellent internship opportunity, we're starting this up again in the fall, and we pay $18 an hour, which is more than a lot of the other programs out there. That's also because we really want the opportunity to be available to students from all backgrounds and walks of life. And we believe that, unfortunately, sometimes internships can are not as available to some people who might be, working parents at a different stage in their life, things like that. So if you know of any great students, we're always looking for great recommendations. And then finally, I know there's a lot on this slide. I apologize. I was really excited to talk to all of you about a lot of different opportunities. Marsha and I chatted a little bit about this. This was a little while ago, though. There is one of our organizations that we work with quite a bit. It's not necessarily our counterpart, but they do similar work up at UAF. It's called Center ICE. They have a large database, for lack of a better word, of community challenges. And it's currently being revamped because it's a little hard to navigate and use. But the reason I thought those who've joined us today might be interested in that is it's kind of a multi use platform. We have students that come forward and are like, I've had this challenge. I really would love to work on it, but I don't really know who I could be working with this on. So that might be somebody who puts in a challenge. We have faculty who say, you know, there's a particular area that I've wanted to research for a long time, but I need community partners who are maybe experiencing this particular problem, or would partner with me on this. They will often put in challenges. And then we get community organizations who come forward and say, I have this big problem, but I don't even know who to go to maybe help me think through different solutions for this. So that's one resource. It's currently getting revamped a little bit, but I know that for many projects, for some of the schooling that I went through, when we would do engaged learning, the professors or programs would often go and find community organizations to partner with and say, like, what are you experiencing, and maybe how might we figure out a great way to either solve that problem or do some research. And so that's an excellent resource that is open to everybody. As I mentioned, the Upstart Alpha Accelerator program, the intern program, design sprints I talked about, and then the last three I haven't talked on, so I'll touch on really quickly. I-Corps is a program through the National Science Foundation. They have funding to do customer discovery. The reason I brought this up was in my experience, oftentimes when faculty or students finish a long engaged learning project, maybe it's like a semester long project, and they're like, this is actually a fantastic idea or solution, and I would like to take it further. What do I do with it? I-Corps is a program, again, customer discovery is a process that's very similar to qualitative research, where you're essentially trying to test your hypotheses that either you have the correct market, or you have the correct product, or that your solution, whatever you come up with, is actually solving the problem that you set out to solve. It's a fantastic project or program, excuse me. It's run through UAF, and what's really cool is that they have what's called a local site up at UAF for this. That's actually really, really rare. Very few places in the United States have those, and so for those interested in doing that type of programming, it has a lot of other connections to the National Science Foundation and a lot of pots of money and funding that they have there. The SBIR and STTR are programs that are set up with funding for those who are looking to do like innovative research. That's actually similar to I-Corps. And so again, those who might be looking to take projects that they've been working on and take them the next step, whether that's commercialization, whether that's extensive prototyping, I mean, depending on your field, that can be an excellent resource. And then finally, this one isn't necessarily funding, but Health Tie is a newer organization that started up about a year and a half ago. Jocelyn Summers, she actually is a colleague of mine at BEI, runs that. And they are looking to really help healthcare providers across the state of Alaska really innovate. And so if you know of any startups or people innovating in the healthcare space, and healthcare, we take that term very broadly. So we've had a lot of mental health specialists come and speak. We had a veteran suicide prevention program come and speak, I think about a month ago. And then they've had people who are working on pacemakers, things like that. So it's a really wide range. They're always looking to have new speakers come in. What's cool is that the health tech community she's really cultivated often connects maybe like university faculty or students working on a project with funders in the community. So it's not necessarily a direct pot of funding itself, but it's a fantastic place for those working in the healthcare field to really connect with entrepreneurs and those in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So I apologize. I've been talking to you for quite a long time now. If any of you have questions, I am going to stick around until this afternoon. But a big part of what I do is really connecting to the community. That's faculty, students, staff. If you have questions about any of the programs I've brought up, I would love to connect. And this you can directly email me, or you can check out our website as well.
We can quickly open the floor if anyone has any burning questions right now for Margo. Kim, I see your mic off.
Oh, I just have a comment. I'm blown away, and I'm embarrassed that I knew nothing about any of this. I had no idea you existed. I mean, I didn't know you personally, of course, Margo, but I didn't know that any of this existed. And I mean, how I cannot be the only person who didn't know that these programs exist. I've been here at UAA for 23 years, and I'm just now getting connected to this. And shame on me and shame on the university for not making this, broadcasting it, because there's so many opportunities for both students and staff and faculty to get involved. And thank you for bringing this to my attention. At least I had no idea.
Not shame on you, Kimberly. That is very typical, and it's on us too. That's part of the reason that when Marcia said, "Would you like to come?" I was like, "Yes." We're here to work with people, and yeah, thank you.
I didn't know about it either. You're not the only one, Kimberly.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kimberly.
What amazing opportunities. I mean, there's so many, I can't even, my brain's kind of fried from this conference I've been on all week, but there's so many opportunities. And from what was, presented even earlier today and what Hollis is going to present even later, there's so many amazing opportunities. So I thank you, Marcia. Thank you, CCEL, and everybody for putting this together, and the presenters for showing us these amazing opportunities.
Well, and Margo's gonna stick around, and we're gonna have some brainstorming time after Hollis's presentation. And Hollis is gonna stick around too, so we'll have a chance. If you want to bounce some ideas, or if you have other questions, or want to have a little bit longer conversations about the opportunities, we'll have that opportunity available too after Hollis is finished up. So I know this was all news to me too. When Margo reached out, I'm like, what, where are you located? I have no idea what any of that is. So many of us in the same position. Okay, well, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Hollis to talk about, I mean, if you felt like this last one was like all this new information, I felt the same way after I talked to Hollis the first time too. So we're going to get a lot of information out in this hour. It's going to be a lot. So I'm going to turn it over to her and let her take over and talk all about the Anchorage Museum and so many cool opportunities there.
I will say, at least I know who Hollis is, and we have been introduced and have done a little bit of work together. So that's why there's a little bit there. So I feel a little bit better.
Well, I'm so grateful to be here today, whether I'm new to you or you're new to me, or whether we're old friends. It's always good to reconnect. I think especially after this year where I think, we're all recalibrating the connections and collaborations that we've had. And also, I think institutions like the Anchorage Museum are finding new ways to collaborate that we didn't have before. So I'm really excited to be here and speaking to each of you today. So I'm here to talk about the Anchorage Museum as a resource and a collaborator for higher education. Before I get started with my presentation, I want to just take a moment for a land acknowledgement. So I'd just like to invite everyone to feel a sense of connection to the earth. So that might be envisioning the earth, that it supports the structure that you're in. And as you feel that sense of connection, to take time to honor and acknowledge the Indigenous peoples of the place where you are. And I recognize that, given the end of term and a remote semester, maybe some of you are actually outside of Anchorage right now. Here in Anchorage, so where I'm situated, these are the traditional homelands of the Eklutna Dena'ina people. They've stewarded these lands for thousands of years. And I want to take a moment to recognize elders present, past, and emerging. Thank you. So at the Anchorage Museum, we are at the beginning of we just concluded a strategic planning process. And, at the core of that process is really recognizing the history of museums as colonial institutions, and the Anchorage Museum as a part of that history, as a colonizing force, and thinking about how something that is a gesture like a land acknowledgement can be a means to open up a conversation about these complex histories. And that's really at the core of what I see my role and responsibility to be in my position of privilege and power at the Anchorage Museum. So I'm the Chief Learning and Access Officer there, which means that I run the education department. So that's everything from, toddler programs to our work with elders to today I had meetings. That the reason I had to step away was I do some curatorial work, and so working with some artists that we have in an upcoming exhibition. If you want to swing by the museum now, I have an exhibition open that's all about sound. So it's a sensory exhibition on the 4th floor and then sort of peppered throughout the museum called Listen Up, Northern Soundscapes. So my work is pretty far reaching. I also run the museum's record label. And I do a lot of administrative things like grants and all sorts of fun things like that. So it's everything from school groups, what you might think of education departments doing, to different kind of community engaged work, which I'm going to talk a little bit about today. So my hope is that in our time together, and I'll try and go short so that you can speak to me a little bit now and decide, in the brainstorming session how you want to move forward, is that I will share some resources and opportunities that are available to you and your students, talk about some potential for co-developing courses and give some examples of what that might look like. And then also to leave time, as I said, for questions and conversation, because it can be pretty overwhelming, and you've been here all day thinking about these things, and I'm sure you've got gears spinning, but also maybe need some time to digest. So I want to talk first about the resources that the museum already has that we can offer you right now. The first is that we have online arts-based resources and to inspire your teaching and learning. And these resources include also a lot of cultural heritage, and they're all multimodal. And these resources are designed for a variety of different age groups. You can sort the list by age group, and they're so you can look for higher education and adult audiences, and we have resources for everyone. So it's a way to think about our methodology and our pedagogy as well, because at the Anchorage Museum we're really based in constructivist learning theory, so learner-centered, and we're object-driven, which means we use the resources of the museum to inspire all of our work. We're inquiry-based, so really everything stems from questions, and again, that kind of learner-centered approach. And so this just can also give you a sense of our kind of methodology and pedagogy at the Anchorage Museum. Right now, there are 100 resources on this website. So I encourage you to take time to explore and peruse, and even examples that might not be, designed specifically for your age group can be that you're teaching, right? So they might be scaffolded more towards high school, can be a point of inspiration in terms of content, and as well as kind of how to engage with objects, how to look at primary sources. Maybe some of you might be quite comfortable using a pair of Yupik socks as a point to talk about a variety of ideas. But if you're not, this is a great place to kind of think about how we're doing that. We have a deck of 20 questions designed to be able to ask any object, whether it's a piece of cultural belonging or whether it is a contemporary artwork. All 20 of these questions should work. So there's all sorts of different ways to sort of think about using primary sources in your classroom, whether or not those primary sources come from the Anchorage Museum. And so this is hopefully a point of inspiration for you. And then we also have let me see, I realize I don't have my chat window open so I can see. Yeah, great. And so we also have a standing MOU with UAA. I think a lot of people don't know this, but you can coordinate through us a field trip to the museum. And as long as it's coordinated through us, you and your students can come for free. And we've done that over the past year in all sorts of creative ways that used to be mostly in some sort of group visit. But in the past year, we had lists of names at the front desk where students would check in and all the students from the class could come on their own time. So we can coordinate with you to make this make sense for you and your students and your teaching goals. We're also glad to facilitate these field trips. So if you want to bring a group to the museum and you want us to spend a long time using a painting of a glacier to unpack Indigenous land rights, we can do that. And we'd love to, do that through conversation and dialogue with your students, maybe some writing and drawing reflection. And we can do that in the galleries in front of the work. We will be resuming right now. We are not doing facilitated field trips, but we will be resuming them in the fall unless things change. So you can think about that as an option for your fall classes. And I just want to say that we are here to support you and ideate these field trips. So let's say you don't actually want a museum educator to facilitate your trip, but you'd like to facilitate it yourself, but you need some help kind of thinking about how to do that. We are here to help you brainstorm what kind of activity to do in the galleries, how you might do pre and post activities and tie it into your syllabus. And we're also really glad, again, to facilitate a wide range of topics. I have educators who are, their backgrounds are geologists and science backgrounds. I have an educator who is, has a master's degree in linguistics and is a translator when he's not working at the museum and speaks, I think, 7 languages fluently. So we can talk about all sorts of different approaches and ways of knowing in the context of our galleries. Through field trips. We also do virtual field trips. So let's say it's just too much to coordinate your big class coming to the museum. That is great. We now do virtual field trips as well. A new muscle we've built in the past year. So we're very glad to facilitate a virtual experience for you and your students synchronously. We could also talk about how to design an asynchronous video or something like that for your class. So as someone who's been teaching through UAA, through Zoom over the past year, I'm certainly, we've taught several thousand school children over the past year over Zoom. We're very comfortable as a team facilitating these kinds of experiences and are glad to help and do it in that way if that's better for you and your students. I do have the chat up, so if you have anything that's coming up as I'm talking, feel free to pop questions in the chat or just interrupt me. We're a small group. Feel free to unmute. So some other things that I want to share is that the Anchorage Museum, we have a very modest amount of our collection online, and it's pretty hard to navigate. So I think if you're looking for something and you don't find it, it often feels like, oh, it's not there, but it might be. So I'd love to help connect you with our archives, which has over 750,000 different photographs, maps, archival documents, slides, as you can see, and our collections team that has thousands more objects. The museum has about 30,000 objects in its collection, and probably about 15% of that is on view. So, understanding there's a much wider breadth of our resources in terms of our collection at the museum. And I'd be glad to help connect you. And it could be for your class, it could be for your teaching, but maybe it's also for your personal research. There's so many networks of information that these objects can open up. And I'm glad to help connect you with those teams. As I mentioned before, we'd be really glad to help you with your own curriculum development, whether that is, thinking about how you're building primary source work into your syllabi, or, supporting students in that kind of work. I would say, as someone who teaches art history, a lot of students, are not really supported before they come to the collegiate level in thinking about how to independently analyze a primary source and use their own interpretive methods. And so that is really our specialty, because that's what museums are. They're houses of these primary sources. So we're glad to help you in developing your curriculum and integrating these kinds of ideas. So For example, here's just a little screen grab of one of our lesson plans. It's all about place names, and we have a bunch of different photographs and maps that we use to talk about those things. Oops, sorry. Looks like my screen share got paused. There we go. Let's see. And true Zoom form. There we go. Are you all able to see my screen share again? Sorry.
Yes, I can see a mouse moving around. I don't know if that, I think that means it's re-engaged.
Yeah, can you, and it says supportive curriculum development. You can see that. Okay, great. Excellent. I just, my phone sometimes comes through my computer as well. So, and I didn't in my true educator way, forgot to turn it on to do not disturb. So apologies for that. But anyway, we are here to support you in your curriculum development. And we've had the opportunity to really engage with faculty in all sorts of creative ways. So here we see on the left, Dr. Maria Williams, who did a faculty fellowship with us that was externally funded. And we don't currently have funding right now for a faculty fellowship, but that is something we hope to reestablish in the future. And we've done programs with faculty where they facilitate close looking. We've also done professional development with faculty at the museum as well. I think, you know, these are kinds of examples of some of the ways that you might begin to think about your own work too. It's wonderful that we can support you and your students, but also thinking about, are there ways that the museum might be able to support your professional goals and research aims as well? And then for students, I just want to highlight that we have internships. They're paid internships, and they, you know, range in scope and scale. We had 2 paid remote interns this year working on soundscape ecology, which is a major project for us. And we've also have interns that are focused more on art and art making and creative practice, research, writing, teaching. So, you know, we always have internships that are available every term, and those appear on our employment page. But of course, we're glad to talk with you if you know of a particular student, or if you're curious and want to share opportunities with your students. You can just reach out to me, and I'm glad to help connect you to what might be available at the museum at that time. So I wanted to just talk briefly about some examples, and let me do a quick time check of some of the things that we've done. And as Marcia said, you know, we've done a lot of different things. So I want to just, you know, these are just a taster of some of the different kinds of collaborations that we've had in the past. I worked with Aisha Barnes to develop a writing course using the Selcraig funds. And this was, we did it over multiple semesters, so multiple iterations of the class. And the course involved students learning about how to engage with artworks and material belongings as primary sources, developing bodies of knowledge and methodologies for researching those objects, and then learning to write about them in a variety of different ways, trying things like wall text, and then presenting them publicly at a First Friday event. So they kind of served as gallery hosts. And that happened, you know, there's a semester-long course. And the students met at the museum for many of those. And that was 2 sections of, I think it was 2 sections of 40. So it was quite a big class, but we managed to make that work. As I mentioned, I teach art history. So my students in every class, we engage with something from the Anchorage Museum collection. We certainly do standalone class visits. And then right now I'm working with Dr. Ian Hartman, and we're just wrapping up a professional development course for Anchorage School District educators that's accredited, and we'll run it again in May in an intensive format that's all about cultural competency and looking at primary sources as a means to understand personal bias, and then also think a little bit about Anchorage and Alaska's history and how to incorporate that in K-12 learning. But I think the format is one that Ian and I have talked a lot about how this particular course actually could be applicable to anyone and would be really great to run in other formats. Then again, Dr. Maria Williams has integrated the class into her curriculum. So those are some examples that are directly UAA, but some of the other collaborations the museum has are quite expansive. So right now, one of our big collaborations is with Refugee Assistance and Immigration Services, and working to support recent arrivals through providing family memberships and specialized programming for those families, and working with Raise to then also build in a longer term kind of framework and plan. We also work a lot with artists from all across the circumpolar north and beyond. And so we have, like, for example, I have 2 artists that'll be in residency in the spring, and they're very eager to engage with college age students, and both of them teach college age students. And so thinking about other ways that you might want to be integrating other kinds of visitors or experts. My department also has a deep investment in sound. I mentioned the record label and these kind of creative endeavors, but we run a statewide soundscape ecology project that has 5 sites at 5 K through 12 schools across the state. And so we have a massive library of sound data, and are working with funds from the Hearst Foundation to get that online in the next year or so to be searchable. Right now it's searchable by my team, and we're glad to help you navigate your way around. If you're looking for a raven in Sitka at 9 in the morning in May, we can probably help you find that. But we work with scientists and researchers in the field of soundscape ecology. So that's another area of our own expertise, and that's really to look at change and dynamism in the environment as we can learn about it through sound, which is a really great way to learn about things that might not be immediately visible or observable. And really also it's for me a really exciting way to start to think about ways of knowing and how to expand perhaps preconceived notions about science or STEM learning, and also to integrate other kinds of ways of listening, right? Because as we start to think about listening as an observation tool, we also want to integrate oral histories, and we can sort of begin to network out beyond these kind of disciplinary divisions, which we're really trying to move away from as a museum. We used to say we're a museum of art, history, science, and culture, and we try not to say that anymore, because we think that maybe there's some opportunity for us to talk about how all these ways of knowing and learning can be brought together without segmenting them into discrete kind of portals. So as you're planning, we're eager to help you. And I would just say that an upcoming exhibition that might be of interest and runs a full year is one that opens this October the 8th. It's tentatively called Cartographies, and it's about maps and map making, but really from a contemporary art perspective, and looking at kind of histories of colonial map making, and then trying to uncouple ideas of mapping and ways of knowing about the land from those colonial practices. So thinking about things like place names, embodied knowledge, and it's a really exciting interdisciplinary show of artists from all across the circumpolar north. So that's one that has a lot of different touch points that might, whether you teach geography or social science, or whether you're thinking about oral storytelling, it's got or dance, it's got a variety of different kind of points of connection. So that's one upcoming exhibition, but they're always changing. And I think that as we have a clearer understanding, our exhibition calendar has been a little bit shuffled by the past year, but as you have a clearer understanding of what 2022 holds, I'll be sure to let Marcia know so that she can also help spread the word as well. But I hope that you'll reach out to me and to us, and we can brainstorm together. I've just unloaded a ton of information. Does anyone have any immediate questions or things I can address right now? I'm really glad to. All right, well, thank you for letting me share a little bit about what the Anchorage Museum has to offer. And I hope to see you all at the museum, which is open sometime soon, or perhaps hear from you as we can think about developing something together.
Thank you so much, Hollis. I feel like I knew most of the stuff that was covered today, and it still feels overwhelming hearing all of that in an hour. It's just like so many possibilities out there. Uh, so this last bit of today, I have set aside for some brainstorming and kind of supported thinking through potential projects or partnerships, or just trying to conceptualize different ideas you might have around projects you're thinking about. Um, my initial plan, full disclosure, was to have 2 breakout rooms. And for whatever reason, I don't have breakout rooms available in my Zoom right now, which is like the most typical Zoom thing to ever Zoom. So I think kind of the way around that is I have created another Zoom link that I think will pop Hollis into. And if you want to go and chat with her about opportunities, you can go there, and we'll leave Margo in this one. And Nicola will be the host in this one, and I will go open up the other one and be the host, and then hand it off to Hollis. And I'll kind of be popping back and forth. And if you have any direct questions for me, feel free to ping me as well. I know a lot of people are it's the last Friday of contract. I know it's the last Friday of contract. And so I also understand that, it's the last Friday of contract. So if you're unable to continue, but you want to maybe continue these conversations at another point, I've seen a lot of comments in the chat that are like, I want to stay, but I have other things going on. Totally, I get it. If you want to continue these conversations, one, you have both Hollis and Margo's contact information, but also feel free to reach out to me. I can help with connecting you with them in any way, or I can help kind of like starting the conversation and connecting you with them in any way as well. And this goes not just for the people in this room right now, but anyone watching this in the recording, that also goes for you. I'm happy to help support you in any way. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording now, just so that we can kind of talk through what we're going to do next, because we've only got a few folks left in here.